Hey students, how's it going? I'm back and I wanted to do another story for you today. This time diving into something a bit new. This is our Myths and Legends of Ancient Japan by F. Hadland Davis. Now, I am really not familiar with Japanese mythology or legends at all. I know Japan has a very rich and very well storied culture and civilization, but their mythology is not something I've dived into as much as their history. And wherever there's a rich culture, there's always going to be a very rich mythology beneath it. So I'm really excited to jump in and experience these stories with you for the first time. I'm not going to go in order, although I do intend to do the creation myth out of this sooner rather than later. But today I wanted to jump into the adventures of Momotaro. I don't really know who Momotaro is, and bear with me because sometimes in this book things are translated, so I'm going to read off and go with the translation from the book as opposed to what a more modern translation might be, as well as pronunciation. I may mispronounce a couple of things, but I will do my best to do a service to the culture and pay my respects to it in the reading of this book. So without further ado, I'm going to begin. These are the adventures of Momotaro. One day, while an old woman stood by a stream washing her clothes, she chanced to see an enormous peach floating on the water. It was quite the largest she had ever seen, and as this old woman and her husband were extremely poor, she immediately thought what an excellent meal this extraordinary peach would make, and she could find no stick with which to draw the fruit to the bank. She suddenly remembered the following verse: "Distant water is bitter, the near water is sweet. Pass by the distant water and come into the sweet." This little song had the desired effect. The peach came nearer and nearer till it stopped at the old woman's feet. She stooped down and picked it up. So delighted was she with her discovery that she could not stay to do any more washing, but hurried home as quickly as possible. When her husband arrived in the evening with a bundle of grass upon his back, the old woman excitedly took out the peach out of a cupboard and showed it to him. The old man, who was tired and hungry, was equally delighted at the thought of so delicious a meal. He speedily brought a knife and was about to cut the fruit open, when it suddenly opened of its own accord, and the prettiest child imaginable tumbled out with a merry laugh. "Don't be afraid," said the little fellow. "The gods have heard how much you desired a child, and have sent me to be a solace and a comfort in your old age." The old couple were so overcome with joy that they each scarcely knew what to do with themselves. Each in turn nursed the child, caressed him, and murmured many sweet and affectionate words. They called him Momotaro, or son of a peach. When Momotaro was 15 years old, he was a lad far taller and stronger than boys of his own age. The making of a great hero stirred in his veins, and it was a knightly heroism that desired to right the wrong. One day, Momotaro came to his foster father and asked him if he would allow him to take a long journey to a certain island in the northeastern sea, where dwelt a number of devils who had captured a great company of innocent people, many of whom they ate. Their wickedness was beyond description, and Momotaro desired to kill them, rescue the unfortunate captives, and bring back the plunder of the island, that he might share it with his foster parents. The old man was not a little surprised to hear this daring scheme. He knew that Momotaro was no common child. He had been sent from heaven, and he believed that all the devils in the world could not harm him. So at length the old man gave his consent, saying, "Go, Momotaro, slay the devils and bring peace to the land." When the old woman had given Momotaro a number of rice cakes, the youth bade his foster parents farewell and started out upon his journey. The Triumph of Momotaro. While Momotaro was resting under a hedge, eating one of the rice cakes, a great dog came up to him, growled, and showed his teeth. The dog, moreover, could speak, and threateningly begged that Momotaro would give him a cake. "Either you give me a cake," said he, "or I will kill you." When, however, the dog heard that the famous Momotaro stood before him, his tail dropped between his legs, and he bowed with his head to the ground, requesting that he might follow Son of a Peach, and render to him all the service that lay in his power. Momotaro readily accepted the offer, and, after throwing the dog half a cake, they proceeded on their way. They had not gone far when they encountered a monkey, who also begged to be admitted to Momotaro's service. This was granted, but it was some time before the dog and the monkey ceased snapping at each other and became good friends. Proceeding upon their journey, they came across a pheasant. Now the innate jealousy of the dog was being awakened, and he ran forward and tried to kill the bright-plumed creature. Momotaro separated the combatants, and, in the end, the pheasant was also admitted to the little band, walking decorously in the rear. At length, Momotaro and his followers reached the shore of the northeastern sea. Here our hero discovered a boat, and after a good deal of timidity, on the part of the dog, monkey, and pheasant, they all got aboard, and soon the little vessel was spinning away over the blue sea. After many days upon the ocean, they sighted an island. Momotaro bade the bird fly off, and a winged herald to announce his coming, and bid the devils surrender. The pheasant flew over the sea, and alighted on the roof of a great castle, and shouted his stirring message, added that the devils, as a sign of submission, should break their horns. The devils only laughed and shook their horns and shaggy red hair. Then they brought forth iron bars and hurled them furiously at the bird. The pheasant cleverly evaded the missiles and flew at the heads of many devils. In the meantime, Momotaro had landed with his two companions. He had no sooner done so than he saw two beautiful damsels weeping by a stream, as they wrung out blood-soaked garments. "Oh," said they pitifully, "we are daughters of daimyos, and are now the captives of the demon king of this dreadful island. Soon he will kill us, and alas, there is no one to come to our aid." Having made these remarks, the women wept anew. "Ladies," said Momotaro, "I have come for the purpose of slaying your wicked enemies. Show me a way into yonder castle." So Momotaro and the dog and the monkey entered through a small door in the castle. Once inside this fortification, they fought tenaciously. Many of the devils were so frightened that they fell off the parapets and were dashed to pieces, while others were speedily killed by Momotaro and his companions. All were destroyed except the Demon King himself, and he wisely resolved to surrender, and begged that his life might be spared. "No," said Momotaro fiercely, "I will not spare your wicked life. You have tortured many innocent people, and robbed the country for many years." Having said these words, he gave the Demon King into the monkey's keeping, and then proceeded through all the rooms of the castle, and set free the numerous prisoners he found there. He also gathered together much treasure. The return journey was a very joyous affair indeed. The dog and the pheasant carried the treasure between them, while Momotaro led the Demon King. Momotaro restored the two daughters of daimyos to their homes, and many others who had been made captives on this island. The whole country rejoiced in his victory, but no one more than Momotaro's foster parents, who ended their days in peace and plenty, thanks to the great treasure of the devils which Momotaro bestowed upon them. The end. So that is an interesting tale. I thought it was pretty exciting, actually, as far as mythology goes. Momotaro. My thoughts on this, I'm going to go into it real quick. So it's interesting to me. Japan has always been a very isolated kind of country. It's thought that people migrated there during the Ice Age, perhaps, over ice-land bridges. And then eventually when stuff melted out and plates shifted farther apart, they were really isolated. Japan really only engaged with the rest of the world when the world came to them, so the Mongol invasion of the 13th century, I think, maybe 12th century, or when Japan was going out to invade Korea, I believe, which happened as well. But most of the time, Japan was pretty self-isolated. Their cultures, their wars with one another, this all took place within Japan itself. They were a very feudalistic society. So it's interesting in this myth, which would have been passed down via the oral tradition for many, many, many centuries prior to being put into written word, sort of just paints this picture of Japan itself, the island, being all good, and traveling to a northernmost island. That's where all the bad things are. That's where the devils lived. Interesting that even in a story as simple as this, the isolationism still rings through. There's no real reason to leave unless you are going to rescue some kidnapped damsels. Also, daimyo was thrown out there in this story. A daimyo is basically a lord. So someone who owns land, would collect taxes on his vassals, who would call forth samurai to fight for him when he was trying to expand his land and his titles. That's what a daimyo is, essentially. So, anyways, that was a fun story to share. I'm glad that you were here to enjoy that with me, and I'm going to let you go now. So, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay in the pursuit of knowledge. Goodbye, students.